The last night Daniel and I were together, he told me I was impossible to love. He didn't yell it. That would have been easier. He said it quietly, almost kindly, like he was diagnosing me. We were standing in his kitchen. The air smelled like burnt garlic and red wine. A glass had shattered earlier, my fault, according to him. You twist things, he said. You make yourself the victim. I remember staring at him and wondering when the man who once kissed my forehead in crowded rooms became someone who watched me cry without blinking. I just want you to listen, I whispered. I do listen, he replied. You just don't like what you hear. That's how it always went. He'd push, I'd react, he'd reframe, I'd apologize, and somehow by the end of every fight, I was the unstable one. That night, when I finally walked out, he didn't stop me. He leaned against the counter and said, "You'll come back. You always do." I didn't respond, but a part of me feared he was right, because chaos felt familiar. And familiarity feels like love when you don't know better. That was the night I decided I would rather marry a stranger than return to something that slowly erased me. I just didn't know the stranger had already chosen me. 2 weeks later, I stood in a ballroom full of strangers pretending I wasn't hollow. Lila insisted I come. You need to be seen, she said. Seen, I didn't realize someone already had been. I felt it before I saw him. That heavy awareness. Like being studied. Across the room, he stood near the wall, not huge nets, not drinking, not laughing, not networking. Watching. Adrian Vale. He wasn't smiling. He looked like he was solving something. And when our eyes met, he didn't glance away. He tilted his head slightly, like confirmation. Then he walked toward me. "Are you all right?" he asked. No introduction, no charm, just observation. And somehow, that felt more intimate than flirting. "I'm fine," I said. "You're not," he replied softly. And for a second, I felt exposed, not judged, just understood. It scared me. It also steadied me. That was the beginning. Not of love, of safety, or so I thought. He didn't chase me, and he didn't overwhelm me. He appeared at charity events, at gallery openings, at a cafe I visited often. Coincidences, I told myself. He never pushed. He asked about my work, my childhood, my sleep. My sleep. "You don't rest deeply," he said once over coffee. I froze. "How would you know that?" "You look like someone who's always listening for something." I laughed it off. But that night I lay awake, wondering how he saw through walls I didn't know I had. 3 months later, he handed me a ring. No kneeling, no fireworks. "Marry me," he said calmly. "I can give you peace." Peace. After Daniel's storms, peace sounded holy. I said yes. Not because I loved him, but because he felt like an exit. And exits look like salvation when you're trapped. Our wedding was quiet. Adrian disliked spectacle. 12 guests. Minimal flowers. Neutral tones. He looked at me like I was something inevitable, not something surprising. That unsettled me. At the altar, he didn't smile widely. He simply held my gaze, as if This moment had been decided long ago, and maybe it had. When we said "I do," I felt something strange. Not butterflies, not adrenaline, certainty, as if the world had clicked into alignment. I thought it was fate. I didn't know it was architecture. That night, the city glowed beneath our balcony. I stood there in silence, breathing in the quiet. Adrian stepped behind me. "You used to count lights when you couldn't sleep," he said. I stiffened. "What?" "The windows," he continued. "You'd try to match your breathing to the blinking towers." My heart slowed. "How do you know that?" He leaned slightly closer and whispered, "Little sparrow." The world stopped. No one had called me that since I was 10. Not since my mother. Not since the house we left behind. I turned slowly. "I never told you that." His expression didn't change. "You didn't have to." And then he walked away, leaving me alone with the first crack in my perfect peace. I didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., I noticed Adrian wasn't in bed. The penthouse had one room he kept locked, his private study. The door was slightly open, light spilling into the hallway. Something inside me knew. I pushed it open and saw my life on the walls. Photos from childhood, school records, addresses, medical notes, mapped, organized, documented, and in the center, Daniel's photo, circled with one word beneath it, catalyst. Behind me, Adrian spoke softly. "You weren't meant to see this yet." "How long?" I whispered. "Since you were 11. And the floor disappeared beneath me. I stumbled backward, my heel catching the edge of a Persian rug. My hand found the desk to steady myself, but nothing could steady what I was seeing. My childhood, pinned to the walls like butterflies. Adrian didn't move. He stood in the doorway with the patience of a man waiting for a storm to pass. "You've been watching me," I said, but it came out as air. He nodded once. It wasn't an admission. It was agreement. Like I'd finally caught up. "Since I was 11, I repeated. "Yes." My throat tightened so sharply I couldn't swallow. "Why?" His gaze flicked to one of the photographs. Me at 12, sitting in a school uniform, lips pressed together like I was holding my breath for years. "You were alone," he said softly. "That's not an answer." "It is," he replied. "Just not one you want." My hands trembled. I forced myself to look at him properly, at the careful tailoring, the calm eyes, the expression that never seemed to panic. A man like that didn't accidentally collect a life. He curated it. "How did you get these?" I demanded. Adrian stepped into the room and closed the door behind him, sealing us inside my stolen past. He walked to the corkboard and traced a finger along the red strings. "You don't understand what you are," he said quietly. I flinched. "What I am?" He looked at me as if he'd said something tender. "Rare." The word landed wrong. My stomach turned. "I'm not," I started. He lifted his hand gently, not to touch me, but to stop the sentence. "I'm not your enemy," he said. I laughed once, sharp and shaking. "Then why does this feel like I married one?" Adrian's voice softened even further, like he'd rehearsed it. "Because you're seeing the scaffolding. Scaffolding? My voice cracked. He nodded toward the timeline. Everything you've survived. Everything that made you. You. I backed away. Stop talking like this is beautiful. His eyes tightened just slightly. It is. For a long moment we stood in silence. The hum of the penthouse vents sounded louder than it should have. Then he said carefully, I won't keep you here. If you want to leave this room, you can. If you want to leave this marriage, you can. Relief flashed in my chest, too quick, too eager. But then Adrian added, I'm simply asking you not to run before you understand. And that's what terrified me. Not that he might stop me, that he didn't need to. The next morning, everything looked normal. Sunlight poured across marble floors. The city beyond the windows was bright and indifferent. A tray of breakfast sat on the kitchen island like nothing had happened. Adrian poured coffee into my cup without asking. I watched his hands. Precise, calm, controlled. The hands of a man who could dismantle a life without leaving fingerprints. You slept? He asked. No, I'm sorry. He said it like a person apologizing for rain. I stared at my coffee. Are there other rooms I'm not allowed in? His expression didn't change. Only the ones that would upset you. Like your study? You weren't meant to find it that way. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. How was I meant to find it? He paused, and for the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. Gradually, the word felt like a threat dressed up as kindness. I pushed the cup away. You have rules. Adrian leaned against the counter. I have boundaries, he corrected. Same thing. He didn't argue. He watched me instead, like he was noting how long it took for anger to become fear. And then he said something that sounded like a promise. You will never be hurt in this house. The air went cold. I whispered, That's impossible. Adrian met my eyes. Not for me. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from an unknown number. You think he's saving you? Ask him what he took from me. D. My stomach dropped. Daniel, he wasn't gone and not yet, and he was close enough to reach me. I looked up at Adrian. He was already watching my face, reading it. How did he get this number? I asked, voice shaking. Adrian's jaw tightened once. He won't have it for long. That's when I realized Adrian's peace didn't mean safety. It meant control, and control always comes with consequences. Daniel didn't call. He didn't show up outside the building like he used to. Instead, he haunted me in small ways. A bouquet delivered to my office with no card. A voicemail from a blocked number where he said nothing, just breathed. A photo sent to my email. Me at the gala, Lila beside me, Adrian in the background, blurred, watching. The subject line read, So that's him. I sat at my desk, staring at it until my vision blurred. When I got home, Adrian was waiting in the living room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up like he'd been preparing. Daniel contacted you, he said. It wasn't a question. I held up my phone. Yes. Adrian's eyes darkened, but his voice stayed calm. He's testing the perimeter. What does that mean? I whispered. It means he can feel the door closing. I hated how he talked like Daniel was an animal. I hated more that he sounded certain. Did you do something to him already? I asked. Adrian walked toward the window and looked out at the city as if choosing an answer from the skyline. I warned him, he said. A sharp pulse of fear. Warned him how? Adrian turned back slowly. Enough that he understands consequences now. What consequences? My voice rose. Adrian's gaze held mine. The kind he never believed in. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Not because it sounded violent, but because it sounded inevitable. Daniel had always believed he could do anything. Men like Adrian made people realize they couldn't. I wrapped my arms around myself. I don't want you to hurt him. Adrian's expression softened in a way that almost looked loving. I don't want to hurt him, he said. Then after a pause, I want him to learn. The word learn was colder than hurt, because learning implies time. It implies captivity. And suddenly, the locked rooms in the penthouse felt louder in my mind. I didn't go looking for the basement right away. I told myself it was paranoia. But the building had a strange architecture. Levels hidden behind locked doors, hallways that felt longer at night, elevators that required Adrian's fingerprint. And once you start noticing what's restricted, you start wondering why. It happened 3 nights later. I woke from a dream where my childhood house had no doors, only walls. My throat was tight, my hands were damp. Adrian wasn't in bed. Again. I stepped into the hallway. The penthouse was quiet, but not empty. A faint sound drifted upward like metal shifting. A soft thud. Then silence. My heart began to hammer. I followed the sound down the staircase I'd never used. The air changed the deeper I went. Colder. Cleaner. Too controlled. Halfway down, I saw it. A reinforced door. Steel. Industrial. Out of place in a home built from glass and marble. There was a biometric panel beside it, faintly lit. I leaned closer, and I heard it, breathing, slow, ragged, human. My whole body locked. Before I could move, a hand closed around my wrist. Adrian. Not rough. Not gentle either. Final. You shouldn't be down here, he said softly. My voice came out broken. Who is that? Adrian's eyes held mine in the dimness. No one you need to worry about. The breathing stopped. The silence afterward was worse. I whispered, Is that Daniel? Adrian didn't answer, and that absence was a confession. Back upstairs, Adrian didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse me. He didn't punish me. He made tea. That was the sickest part. The normalcy. I sat on the couch with my arms wrapped around myself while he placed a cup in front of me as if we were discussing a disagreement about paint colors. You locked him down there, I said. Adrian sat across from me, posture perfect. I contained him. Contained? I snapped. He's a person. Adrian's gaze didn't flinch. He made you feel like you weren't. My chest tightened. That doesn't make this okay. I didn't say it was pretty, he replied. I said it was necessary. I shook my head. You can't just decide what's necessary. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Someone has to, he said quietly. My breath caught. Do you hear yourself? I hear you, he said, calm as ever. I've always heard you. My skin prickled. Stop saying things like that. His eyes softened. I mean them. I stood, pacing, trying to shake the sensation that the walls were listening. You told me I could leave, I said. Is that still true? Adrian didn't move. Yes, he said. Relief flashed, then died when he added, but I think you should understand something first. He paused, voice gentle. Daniel was never love. He was a lesson you refused to learn. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Adrian's gaze sharpened just slightly. You're drawn to men who fracture you. You forgive until you disappear. You call it devotion. I felt my eyes burn. You don't know me. Adrian stood slowly. I know you better than you've allowed anyone to, he said. Then he stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that I felt his heat. And I will not let you die inside for someone like him. The words should have sounded romantic. Instead, they sounded like a sentence. Because not letting is another name for control, and control, no matter how softly spoken, always has teeth. That night I couldn't breathe. Not from fear of Daniel, from fear of Adrian. Fear of what he might do. Fear of what he believed he had the right to do. I waited until Adrian finally went to bed. Then I returned to the study. My hands were steadier than I expected. I didn't want to be. But something in me had shifted. If I was already trapped in his story, I needed to know the plot. I moved straight to the corkboard, the one with Daniel's photo, the one labeled Catalyst. My fingers found the edges, and I pulled. The board swung forward like a door, and behind it, another board. This one older, more detailed, more disturbing. It wasn't about Daniel, it was about me. Age 11. Initial observation begins. Age 14. Attachment style identified. Age 18. Target environment stabilized. Age 22. Monitor romantic susceptibility. Age 24. Introduce catalyst candidate pool. Candidate pool. My blood turned to ice. There were names under it. Men I recognized. A guy from my college literature class who'd asked me out twice. A coworker I dated briefly and then ended because he felt wrong. A barista who always seemed to appear when I was crying in public bathrooms. Men I thought were coincidences. They were listed like options, like prototypes, like attempts. At the bottom, in Adrian's handwriting, Daniel Carter, selected. High volatility, high charm, high control drive. My mouth went numb. This wasn't stalking. This wasn't obsession. This was design. And then I saw the final line, underlined twice. Marriage outcome. Veil. My stomach lurched. I backed away so fast I hit the desk. A sound slipped out of me, half sob, half laugh, because I finally understood. Daniel wasn't the reason I married Adrian. Daniel was the bridge Adrian built to reach me. The doorknob behind me turned. I froze. Adrian stepped in, quiet as a shadow. He looked at the open board, at my face, at the truth, uncovered. And for the first time since I met him, he smiled. Not warm, not cruel, satisfied. I didn't want you to find that alone, he said softly. My voice shook. How many times did you try before Daniel? Adrian's eyes stayed on mine. As many as it took, he said. Then gently, like a lover, like a keeper of promises, he whispered, You're safe now, little sparrow. And somewhere deep below us, something hit steel. Once, twice. Then silence. The sound from below didn't echo. It absorbed. Steel swallowing impact. I stared at Adrian, waiting for denial. He didn't offer it. He didn't rush to explain. He simply watched my face the way someone watches weather change across open water. You're keeping him there, I whispered. Adrian's voice was calm, temporarily. That's kidnapping. That's protection. My heart was pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. You don't get to redefine words. He tilted his head slightly. Language is always redefined by the person with control. That answer chilled me more than the sound below. Let him go. Adrian didn't move. He isn't ready. Ready for what? To understand that you're no longer accessible to him. Accessible, like I was property transferred between owners. Something inside me shifted then. Not panic. Clarity. I realized arguing wasn't going to move him. Emotion was a language Adrian translated but didn't obey. So I did something different. I went quiet. And that unsettled him more than screaming would have. The next morning, Daniel was officially reported missing. News notifications flooded my phone. Last seen 3 days ago. Friends concerned. Unusual behavior prior to disappearance. Unusual behavior. That was true. He had seemed nervous the last time he texted me. I hadn't noticed it then. Now I replayed every message. He'd said, You don't know who he is. Adrian stood in the kitchen reading a digital report on his tablet. You're trending, he said calmly. Excuse me? Online? Your name is connected because of the restraining order. I felt sick. Police are going to question us. They already have a statement. You gave one? I prepared one. The air felt thin. And what does it say? That Daniel was unstable and prone to disappearing when under stress. I stared at him. That's not a lie, Adrian added. No, it wasn't. That's what made it dangerous. You can't control this, I said. Adrian looked up at me slowly. I don't need to control it. He paused. I only need to guide it. The certainty in his voice told me something critical. Daniel's disappearance wasn't a reaction. It was phase 2. They came that afternoon. 2 detectives. One older, patient eyes. One younger, sharp and suspicious. They sat across from me in the living room. Adrian stood behind the couch, silent, observing. When did you last see Daniel Carter? the older one asked. Before my wedding, I replied. Any contact after? I hesitated. Adrian's presence felt like gravity behind me. A few texts, I admitted. Threatening, unsettling. That was the truth. The younger detective studied Adrian. You seem calm, Mr. Vale. Adrian offered a small smile. I've dealt with men like Mr. Carter before. The younger detective's brow lifted. And what does that mean? Adrian didn't blink. It means instability escalates before collapse. I felt the room tighten. The older detective cleared his throat. Did you threaten him? Adrian met his gaze evenly. I warned him. There it was again. Warned. The detectives left without pressing harder. Too easily. That night I realized something terrifying. Adrian didn't need to intimidate police. He outclassed them. I went down alone. I didn't tell Adrian. I waited until he was in his office, doors closed. The biometric panel glowed when I approached. I pressed my thumb against it. It flashed red. Access denied, of course. I turned, and Adrian was already at the bottom of the stairs. You won't get in without me, he said. I need to talk to him. No. Why? Because he'll lie. I laughed weakly. And you don't? Adrian stepped closer. I don't need to. The steel door hummed softly behind him. I swallowed. Does he know? Know what? That he was chosen. A pause. Yes. My chest tightened. And? Adrian's voice dropped slightly. He negotiated. The word hit like a slap. Negotiated? Yes. With you? Yes. For a moment I couldn't breathe. You paid him. Adrian didn't deny it. I compensated him. My legs felt weak. This was never just about me escaping him, I said. Adrian's gaze was steady. No, it was worse. Daniel hadn't been random. He had been installed. I demanded to see it. The agreement, the proof. Adrian didn't argue. He walked upstairs and returned with a thin black folder. He placed it on the kitchen counter. I opened it slowly. Inside, non-disclosure agreement, compensation structure, behavioral triggers outlined. My name appeared repeatedly. Subject demonstrates anxious attachment response under emotional withdrawal. Escalation likely if instability increases. Marriage probability increases after emotional collapse phase. My hands began shaking violently. He had mapped me like a business acquisition. You manipulated my entire life, I whispered. No, Adrian corrected gently. I accelerated your pattern. You weaponized my psychology. I optimized it. The difference between those words was small, but morally it was everything. I looked up at him. You didn't save me. His eyes softened. I did. The conviction in his voice made me understand something chilling. He truly believed that. That night I packed a suitcase. Not dramatically, quietly, methodically. I folded dresses, shoes, jewelry. I told myself it wasn't running, it was reclaiming control. Adrian watched from the doorway. He didn't stop me. You're leaving, he said. Yes. For where? I don't know. He nodded once. You can. Relief hit too quickly, but then he added, he will still exist. My heart dropped. Daniel? Yes. You said he'd be relocated? I will honor the contract. Then why would he still matter? Adrian's eyes held mine. Because you haven't finished understanding. His calmness made my resolve tremble. You think I'll come back? I know you, he replied. That certainty felt heavier than chains. I did something reckless. I asked to see Daniel. Alone. Adrian hesitated for the first time. You're not ready. Neither is he. Silence. Then Adrian surprised me. 5 minutes, he said. The steel door opened. The air inside was sterile, controlled, almost clinical. Daniel sat in a chair, not restrained, just contained. He looked thinner, nervous. When he saw me, his expression cracked. You finally know, he said. My heart hammered. How long? I asked. Since the beginning? The room tilted. You agreed to this? Daniel laughed bitterly. At first it was easy money. My stomach twisted. And then I realized he wasn't just studying you. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the door. He was studying me too. Fear crept into my spine. He tests everyone, Daniel whispered. You weren't the only candidate. Candidate, the word echoed. You were the best match, Daniel added quietly. My throat tightened. For what? Daniel's eyes darkened. For obsession. The door opened behind me. Time was up. The next morning, Daniel was gone. No steel door. No chair. No presence. Adrian stood in the kitchen pouring coffee. It's done, he said. Where is he? Relocated. How? Quietly. I stared at him. And if he breaks the agreement? Adrian met my gaze. He won't. The certainty in his tone wasn't a threat. It was confidence. Daniel hadn't just been paid. He had been warned. And suddenly I understood something bigger. Adrian didn't eliminate threats. He converted them into silence, into compliance, into distance. I searched the study again. This time for something older. Something before Daniel, and I found it. A folder labeled Pre-Selection Analysis. Inside were profiles. Men. With notes. Too independent. Insufficient volatility. Low psychological impact. Impact? He had been calibrating emotional damage. Like dosage. At the back of the file was a page that made my blood run cold. Subject must believe marriage is escape, not design. I dropped the folder. That wasn't love. That was engineering. I confronted him that night. Did you ever intend to let me choose freely? Adrian didn't look surprised. You did choose. Between options you planted? His eyes didn't waver. Every choice is influenced. Not like this. He stepped closer. I removed chaos from your life. You inserted it first? Silence. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. I would have married you without Daniel. I stared at him. Then why didn't you? A pause. Because you wouldn't have felt safe. And I realized he wasn't trying to trap me. He was trying to make me want the trap. For the first time since I met him, Adrian looked unsettled. It was small, but real. When I said, I don't know if I can love someone who scripts my pain, his jaw tightened. That pain wasn't scripted. It was selected. A flash in his eyes. You survived it. That doesn't make it okay. He looked away, and in that moment, I saw the flaw. He needed to believe he was the hero. Without that belief, he was just a man who orchestrated cruelty. And I realized something critical. If I could crack that belief, I could destabilize him. That night, standing on the balcony, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like someone studying her captor. Adrian joined me. You're different, he said. Yes. How? I'm not afraid of you. That wasn't entirely true, but it was powerful. His gaze searched my face. And what are you now? He asked softly. I met his eyes evenly, deciding. And for the first time, Adrian didn't look certain. He looked curious, because something had shifted. I wasn't trying to escape the cage anymore, and I was learning its structure. And cages have weaknesses. Adrian did not fear losing me. He feared being wrong about me. I saw it the moment I said I wasn't afraid. His eyes didn't harden. They sharpened, like a scientist adjusting focus. He stepped closer on the balcony. You think I'm the villain now? He said calmly. I think you needed to be the hero. A pause. Wind moved through my hair. He didn't deny it. That was my first real confirmation. Adrian wasn't driven by cruelty. He was driven by correction. He believed he fixed broken systems, businesses, markets, people. And he had decided I was a system mismanaged by chaos. You optimized my suffering, I said quietly. I prevented your destruction, he replied. There it was. Not love. Justification. And if justification was the foundation, then doubt was the crack. I stopped fighting him. I stopped accusing him. I started asking questions, not emotional ones, structural ones. How did your father choose subjects? What variables mattered most? What disqualified a candidate? Adrian answered without suspicion. That was his blind spot. He didn't think I could out-strategize him. He thought I was emotional, reactive, recovering. He didn't realize I was learning. In his study, I began noticing patterns. Color codes, annotations, time markers. He loved organization. He trusted systems, and systems can be manipulated. The more he explained, the more I understood. Adrian didn't act impulsively. He built contingencies, backup plans, fail-safes. He didn't trap people. He predicted them, which meant if I acted outside prediction, I could disrupt him. I found old recordings in a locked drawer, audio files labeled by year. Most were business meetings. One was different. His father's voice. You don't interfere emotionally, the older man said. You observe until pattern solidifies. Adrian's younger voice responded. What if intervention improves outcome? A pause. You're not God, his father said flatly. Silence. Then Adrian again. No, but I can optimize variables. I closed the recording. There it was. This wasn't about me. It started long before me. Adrian wasn't obsessed with me. He was obsessed with proving his father wrong. He believed emotional intervention could improve outcomes, and I was his proof of concept. That realization changed everything. And I wasn't chosen because I was rare. I was chosen because I was measurable. I confronted him gently, not angrily. Your father didn't believe in interference. Adrian's expression stilled. You went through the archives. Yes. A pause. You think this is about him? I think this is about you needing to prove something. For the first time, he didn't respond immediately. That silence was louder than any confession. You believe I manipulated you for validation, he said quietly. I believe you needed to succeed. He stepped closer. And have I failed? The question hung between us, I answered carefully. I don't know yet. That unsettled him more than accusation would have, because Adrian only feared one thing: inefficiency. And if I wasn't better, then his intervention had been pointless. I asked to see Daniel's relocation confirmation. Adrian hesitated. He's safe, he said. That wasn't my question. He studied me carefully. You don't trust me. I'm verifying data. That language. His language. After a moment, he handed me a secure tablet. Documents. New identity, financial transfer, signed compliance agreement. Daniel had vanished legally, erased with paperwork, efficient, clean. But as I scrolled, I noticed something. One line. Subject Psychological Volatility Index. Elevated. Adrian noticed my pause. What? You miscalculated him, I said softly. His jaw tightened slightly. Explain. You assumed he'd stabilize under compensation. And? And men like Daniel don't stabilize. I met his eyes. They escalate. For the first time. Adrian looked uncertain. Not about me. About Daniel. An uncertainty in him felt seismic. 3 days later, I received an encrypted email. No sender, no subject, just one line. You were never the only one. And an attachment. A photo, not of me, of another woman standing beside Adrian. Different city, different year. Same expression I once had. Guarded, unaware. My blood ran cold. When I confronted Adrian, he didn't deny it. She was monitored, he said evenly. Monitored? Potential candidate. Did you introduce someone to her too? Silence. How far did you take it? I whispered. She opted out. How? She left before escalation. I felt something inside me twist. She left. Yes. And you let her? Yes. That was worse somehow. Because it meant I hadn't been trapped. I had stayed. Did you love her? I asked. Adrian's eyes sharpened. I don't distribute love like inventory. That's not an answer. She lacked resilience. The word stunned me. Resilience? She broke under pressure. So you withdrew. I recalibrated. My voice shook. I am not a resilience test. You are, he said softly. Remarkable. That wasn't romance. That was assessment. And suddenly I understood the final truth. Adrian didn't love weakness. He loved endurance. He didn't want a fragile woman. He wanted one who could survive him. And I had. Daniel broke his silence. A news article surfaced overseas. Financial fraud, identity irregularities, questionable offshore accounts. Daniel's new identity was unraveling. I watched Adrian read the report. His composure cracked. Just barely. You see, I said quietly, you underestimated volatility. Adrian's jaw tightened. He signed compliance. He was never compliant, I replied. Silence stretched. You were so focused on designing me, I continued, you forgot to design him properly. That landed because it was true. Adrian optimized patterns. But Daniel wasn't pattern. He was impulse, and impulse spreads. Adrian disappeared for 2 days. No explanation, no updates. When he returned, his suit was wrinkled for the first time since I'd known him. You handled it, I said. Yes. How? He didn't answer. And that silence confirmed it. He had intervened again. Directly. Emotionally. Against his father's principle. Against his own rules. You interfered, I said softly. His eyes met mine. Yes. Not proud, not ashamed, just honest. That was the first time Adrian acted from emotion. Not optimization, emotion. For me. And that changed the equation. That night I asked him something that altered everything. If I'd married someone else, would you have let me? The air stilled. Adrian didn't move. No, there was no hesitation. What would you have done? Removed him. My heart pounded. How? He held my gaze. Efficiently. And suddenly, the cage felt visible again. I stepped closer to him. And if I leave now? A pause, then, I will wait. That again. Always that. Because Adrian didn't chase. He predicted return. And that was his flaw. He assumed pattern repetition. But people change. I didn't pack a suitcase this time. I packed knowledge. I transferred copies of his files, archived recordings, backup drives, insurance. I wasn't escaping, and I was balancing leverage. One evening, I handed him a single envelope. What's this? He asked. Proof? I said. Of what? That I'm no longer a variable. He opened it. Inside were documented files of his research division, his methods and his interventions. Are you threatening me? He asked quietly. No. I met his eyes. I'm leveling us. Silence stretched, long and heavy. Then, Adrian did something I didn't expect. He smiled. Not satisfied, not amused. Proud. You adapted, he said softly. Yes. His voice lowered. Good. That's when I realized. He didn't want control. He wanted evolution. and I'd finally stepped into the role he designed. An equal. We stood on the balcony again. City lights below. Wind moving softly around us. "You can leave," he said. "I know." "You can expose me." "I know." "Will you?" I looked at him. At the man who orchestrated my suffering, who engineered my escape, who tested my resilience, who intervened when chaos returned. "I don't need to," I said. "Why?" "Because I'm not your experiment anymore." He studied my face carefully. "And what are you?" I stepped beside him. Not behind, not in front. Beside. "I'm your uncertainty." For the first time, Adrian laughed. Softly. Genuinely. And something shifted between us. Not ownership, not rescue. Balance. Dangerous. Intelligent. Voluntary. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't saved. I was aware. And that awareness was power. The city stretched endlessly below. And I understood the final truth. Adrian didn't design my salvation. He designed the conditions. But I chose the outcome. And this time, it wasn't peace I felt. It was control. Mine. 3 months later, the world forgot Daniel Carter. No body. No scandal. No headlines. Just another man who vanished into paperwork and geography. Vail Industries stock rose 4%. The world kept moving. And so did we. But something had changed. Not in the house, not in the city, in him and in me. Adrian no longer locked doors. The basement remained empty. The study door stayed open. The corkboards were still there, but untouched. He didn't remove them. He didn't hide them. He let me see the architecture. That was the shift. Control doesn't dissolve. It transforms. One evening I walked into his study alone. I stood in front of the board that once mapped my life. Then I did something simple. I removed the red string. All of it. Every connection, every label, every annotation. Adrian watched from the doorway. "You're dismantling it," he said. "Yes." "Why?" I met his eyes. "Because I don't need it to understand myself anymore." A long silence followed. Then he stepped forward. Not to stop me, to help. He pulled the final pin free. The board fell blank. For the first time since I met him, he had undone something he built. Not because he calculated it, because I asked. That was the resolution. Later that night on the balcony, I asked him the final question. If I had broken under Daniel, what would you have done? Adrian didn't hesitate. I would have intervened sooner. And if I had hated you for it, he looked at the skyline. I would have accepted it. That was the first answer he ever gave that wasn't optimized. It was honest. And honesty is unpredictable. The truth is this: Adrian Vail is dangerous, not because he cages people, but because he believes he knows what's best for them. The difference now? He no longer believes he knows what's best for me. He asks. And that's power. Real power. Voluntary. I didn't expose him. I didn't leave. I didn't surrender either. I rewrote the structure. The basement remains unlocked. The study remains open. The future remains undecided. And sometimes, when the city lights flicker below us, he still whispers, "Little sparrow." But now, I choose whether I answer.